I should delete this one.
No. I just did all those things. It's still going.
This time will be watchable for 30 days and then deleted. I just dump it like this. Delete.
Yeah. Just copy that.
How do I
Dun, dun, dun. Stay tuned. You got to play the music. Dun, 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 dun. We'll be coming up on our broadcast shortly. This is our first time live on YouTube.
Yes.
So welcome, YouTube folks. And we'll be getting into it in just a minute. I'll work out a couple of technical glitches. But the interesting thing, while Kerry's figuring out our other platforms, yeah. A couple of interesting things about we're going with real estate stats this year in the last 12 months. Are you?
I think it's good. Yeah.
You think you're good? We're about to begin.
Okay.
And while you guys are here, let's see if you're going to fit in this camera.
Oh no.
Yeah. There we go. There we go.
Okay.
Okay, we're better.
Yes.
A little bit better. All right. Anyway, Friday.
Yes, it is. It's Friday.
And today is matching the kind of luck everything is kind of worked in on, which is the 13th.
Yes, Friday the 13th.
So is the 13th good luck for you or bad luck? Or you're making a determination?
Nothing really ever stood out on the 13th.
No.
On the Friday.
No? Okay. Well, let's get into it because nothing really stood out.
No.
Well, maybe today will.
Maybe.
Watch when you leave. Anyway, we're going to get into the data and stats that I think everybody should. This was an unusual year, right?
Yes.
So there's a whole bunch of things that happened this year that I think everybody should be aware of because some of the stats we're going to go over are actually going to be about what crazy things have happened over the last 12 months in real estate, because it's definitely an interesting time. No doubt it. It's a tale of two markets. It's a tale of multiple offers. It's a tale of people not getting offers. It's a very strange market, and it's a low volume market, which makes it even more. So people's experiences could be vastly different depending on a few things.
Mm-hmm. And
I think some of these things, as we get into them, we'll elaborate on what it means for you guys moving into the 2025 real estate market. This is going to be an entertaining time. It really is.
For sure.
Are you excited about 2025? I'm excited about getting 2025. Getting there is going to be the battle.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that pans out. Why don't you begin? What's the first set of data that you want to cover first in this top 5? Because these are the top 5 things that we think you should know for 2025 coming up.
Yes.
Because 2024, like we said earlier, is these last 12 months. So part of 2023, 2024.
Yeah. So the first one is how many consecutive years have home prices risen?
Mm-hmm.
That is 11 years. Home prices have risen 18% in 11 years.
Yeah. Well, I think you got it the other way around. It actually rose more than 8% over the 11 years. So the big thing, home prices have risen for 11 consecutive years.
Yeah.
With 18% being 2021's real estate market. That is the first time in history, this is the biggest appreciation in real estate ever recorded. So the span of just this last, I'd say the last 4 years in real estate, and this is like I said, of the 11 consecutive years of raises, the last time they actually came down was 2012, and that was following the multiple interest rate cuts that took place after they were almost, I believe they were at zero back in 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. It was pretty awful times in real estate, but it's something to, it's a case study for sure. And I've done some home on that. One day I'll get into.
Yeah.
I did, goodness, I did some research into like how bad that really was. But it's 11 consecutive years, guys. That's all. That's the biggest of the records. The record really stands with the last 4 years going up 18. Well, it was 18% in one year. And we've done these stats in New Jersey for the New Jersey market, Monmouth and Ocean counties. The last 4 years, some markets have expanded 60, 65, 70% in just that period of time. Never happened before, but it's interesting times. And a lot of it had to do with COVID. But, the big thing is it's made for a pretty peculiar market, especially in the Monmouth County, New Jersey area. Prices have seen incredible increases, and it's one of the hottest real estate markets currently in the United States. So it's interesting to say the least. We've done some data; they move fast. The houses there move fast.
Oh yeah.
Still, but there are signs that are slowing down a bit. So next set of data.
The next set of data is that it has been 24 years since interest rates were this high.
Right.
Yes. So as of right now, interest rates are between 5.25% and 5.50%.
Is it? I think that's probably on the low side. I think on a 15-year loan, they're 5.50. On 30 years, they're about 6.
Okay.
Yeah, so about 6% on the 30, around 6. So this is the lowest it's been since last year, prior to July, sometime in May of 2022. Rates were down to basically, rates were down just where they are now. So historically, this is one of the fastest rate increases in history. So it was a pretty big knee-jerk backward in this market, which has made people quite weary of whether they were going to sell, buy, and it's shown up in the stats, especially the most recent data. But I do think that it's been 24 years that we reached the peak where we reached this year. So at nearly 8%, that's considerable. That's a considerable amount of, that's a considerable increase in rates. And has dented housing affordability. It's one of the biggest things obviously hearing more and more.
Yeah. It says here the highest mortgage interest rates in the early 2000s peaked at around 8.52%.
So the last time, so it was the last time rates came up this high was in 2000. The interesting thing is that coincided with and this is the interesting thing. If you go through the correlation of history, and I've done some research on this even prior to that, one of the things that were precursor to actually recessions was the amount of interest rate hikes that happened prior to them. And in 2000, if you remember back in 2000, obviously with 9/11, really set things off. It was at the dot-com bubble, and we slipped into a recession, and rates dropped considerably. And this is why, when you're trying to lead the market and try to make people understand like what it is that's going to happen with markets, is there's certain things you try to build correlations off of. And we're starting to see some interesting correlations with, it's not playing out the same way like every other real estate market or any market in general played out. So we always look for this trend. Usually prior to, so people think like, oh, the rates coming down means the economy may be better. I'm not telling you that that's the case, because everything that we have in data and data points that we've looked at is showing that the interest rate hikes have been followed by, even with considerable drops, interest rates from the Fed have shown a recession follow first. So the interesting thing is that I'm not sure about how the data. There's a lot of things that are different now than they were in the past, as far in terms of how this is being reported out. But I could just tell you that, you know, from the lay person out into the world, it appears that a recession has kind of been in the fold for, I would say, approximately. And why it's different this time around, because kind of the inflation numbers make things look better than I would project. So, you know, GDP, your GDP numbers are saying it's growing. GDP is how much of it is debt driven GDP and how much is inflation driven GDP is really the key to understanding whether you actually have a positive or negative. So to me, if prices are raising and like goods and services are raising at 25% in some cases, and GDP is only raising at 2%, I have to say consequently that's not a good correlation, because the gross domestic product is measured in dollars, obviously, and the output in dollars. And if your inflated showing up in the inflation report, I don't know what it should look like. And if it was the case that it was up 20%, I would say, like, you know, and I do believe inflation's kind of hit in aspects, probably closer to, in, you know, whether it's food, gas, energy. Maybe you've been to a restaurant lately. You're going for your lungs now. It's not, right?
No, it's expensive.
Carrie makes sure her dates pay for dinner. So you hear that, guys? You have to pay. She's on the inflation reduction plan.
My mom.
Where is she watching?
On Facebook.
Oh, okay, I can't see through that's me and you can see.
Hi, Mom. She said hi.
Hey. But the big thing is, like, with inflation being what it is, and with the inflation affecting interest, GDP, we have to look at it a little bit more. But let's keep, because my son has a game tonight.
Oh no, that's good.
Yeah, he's playing for Farrow football.
It's at his.
Yeah, it's here in Oakwood. So we did the whole prices. Next one.
Next one is a 46% increase in homes for sale in Florida.
There you go. So when we say we're building correlations, there's all sorts of spots that are showing up in terms of where you see things and look at that kind of point us in different directions. Here's one of the interesting stats. 46% is the amount of increased inventory in Florida. So what does that mean for you guys? It's not happening everywhere. I hate to say, when it comes to real estate, Florida is a pretty good indicator. The weird thing about these stats is Nevada is actually went in the opposite direction. I believe the inventory shrank still in Nevada, which was a building boom back in the 2005, 2006 time frame. So it was like Florida and Nevada were the two really hardest hit markets, parts of Arizona. But I must say, this is where like all these things are like, all sorts of things are happening. They all have some prior looks at recessions and where we're heading. They're not showing up all similar, but there's like little pieces or footnotes that you have to make with each event. So, you know, if you start combining these, it does point to certain things that I would be cautious about how real estate will respond in the next 6 to 8 months. But we'll see. So that was, what was that? That was a 46%.
46, yeah.
So 46%. Wow, that's a big jump. It hasn't happened since 2006. So if anybody wants a historical perspective, 2006, Florida was the last time you saw inventory raise this high. Now, what does that look like? There's a little bit different this time around because I think what's happening is the cost of ownership has risen quite a bit in that period of time. So I think maybe um, maybe we're seeing a chance that prices come down there a little bit. And I think in certain markets over in Florida, we are seeing that. And I know if your mom is watching,
Yeah.
that Florida, she has a house in Florida, correct?
Yes. Her and my dad, yeah.
And
So I could say
yeah,
they are part of that 46.
and they just it's not the I always we could always tell here because on a group called Staten Island to New York to New Jersey and Florida real estate,
Yes.
and the amount of Florida like advertisements that are coming up on the feed is like skyrocketing, and I could always tell when the market's getting a little bit more sluggish. How many more posts are related to Florida real estate, and it's up considerably.
Yeah.
So it's
This is your Orlando market specifically in Florida.
the Orlando is one of the epicenters for even when the financial crisis ensued. This is why when you see increasing rates, it was a precursor to 2000, much different than the 2006 market. When you see like that show, like there's certain things that are showing up in difference. It looks different, but there's similarities between all of them, and I think that's where we're seeing numbers that can be concerning over the intermediate term, and that we'll see how it plays out. So far, everything's remained pretty, like especially locally, but we do look outside the boundaries of where we are to kind of see what's happening with the real estate market moving forward. Because I definitely think that these things should be like they should be looked at carefully. It's going to be slow. Look, I'm not going to tell anybody it's a slower market. Even here, there are houses, and people. I think a lot of people use the exception as the rule, and the biggest correlations between like the past markets and this one, higher end homes that were usually a more problem selling are having a harder time selling now, which is very strange in the marketplace to see like more high home selling than actually at the lower end.
Yeah.
My thing is that the data could get skewed quite a bit just because of how many more higher end homes are selling versus the mid range. And when I say mid range, the 5, the 4s, the 6s, 7s, like in that range, that the volume will be maybe even considerably more lower. But we tend to use medians.
Yes.
Don't fall off the chair, Carrie.
I'm sorry.
But
yes.
So
Yeah, so 46 increase.
46% increase. Yes, just in 1 year.
Yeah, that is crazy though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the insurance costs, the collapse of the condominium for Fort Lauderdale, which raised a lot of assessments, have really impacted the Florida real estate market quite a bit. So it's interesting. It's time for sure when it comes to Florida real estate. It's not the same thing as not necessarily people being able to pay, but Airbnb is another situation that's happening down there. Are you aware of any Airbnbs out in Florida?
No, I never
Never really looked around.
No.
Nobody's come to stay at your Florida and you said, "Oh no, you can't stay here. Go to the Airbnb and go hang out over there." No, Airbnb is a problem. I think that's one of the biggest. Orlando specific. So when you're seeing the rise in inventory, there's a rush to the gates because people during the pandemic had a few extra bucks. Said, "Oh, let's invest in real estate and short-term rent it." Didn't work. It's not working. People run out of money for Airbnbs. It's one of the biggest problems in the market right now. And probably, I would say, of Florida's 46% increase, about 25 to 30% is just Airbnb rental, short-term rentals. So I do think that that's a problem. I mean, where that goes from
Mm.
here, um, Airbnb is definitely a reason people are on short-term renting. It's one of the first things. 'Cause Florida tends to be a leisure spot. So leisure spots, when the economy is not healthy, that's why it tends to do worse at you know when the economy isn't great.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah. So Airbnb.
Have you ever stayed in an Airbnb?
No, I never have. So
Do
I
you know
don't
anybody
have.
who has?
No, I
You
don't.
did it old school. You rented directly from the real estate person or from the homeowner, correct? When you had your summer rental.
Yes.
Yeah, do you know how the people found them?
No.
Or she just showed up at the door.
I
Here's a,
did.
here's a check.
I did.
Here's the check.
I
Anyway,
did.
so what's next?
So the fourth one is that the last time the Fed rose interest rates was in 2015 to 2018.
Yes, this fast.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that's an interesting one. So the last time Feds rose like three consecutive meetings was well, they did it a little bit more gradually, but the last time there was this many consecutive raises was that the markets really heated up quite a bit. Prices were appreciating. This was post recession era. The interesting thing is the same thing happened then as now. And people don't talk about this. And it was a harbinger where we are as far as low inventory numbers, because when the interest rates peaked in like the 2015, 2016, they definitely came up. They weren't as high as they were by any stretch now. They were only up because we were sitting in the threes, high threes, and then it shot up to like maybe 4.7. But that was like a shock to the market because everybody was like, they were in this. It was a very low interest rate environment for a period of time. But the same thing happened. One of the things, the last time I remember and seeing the numbers, inventories came down as low as they are, was to that span 2015, 16, 17, 18. Inventory numbers dropped substantially then. There was a problem with low inventory. That did reverse itself. The market to the pandemic was not particularly strong. I think people they got the pandemic period past the pandemic period. There was consistently more inventory in the market prior, and the higher bracket real estate or the high end real estate definitely had a harder time selling than it did after the pandemic period. And the question really remains is, there's a tale of two markets. How long does this persist? Because right now, I do believe that the higher end has seen some appreciable growth. Some other parts of the market have not. And I think when people do the stats and they give numbers, they don't segment the market out in a way that people understand it. So people will say, oh, prices are still rising, but why doesn't my house sell? Well, because it moves at different speeds between different price points. And I think people make the mistake of saying, oh, well, the market's great and that's what I hear. And unfortunately, when you deal with a lot of punditry, where people who just, there are different segments within the market and some of them are extremely healthy and others aren't. And I think people make the mistake all the time of saying, hey, well, I was told the market's great here. Well, it depends on the segment you're in. Depends on, and it comes, when you deal with we talked about low inventory markets before.
Yes.
Low inventory markets are very, very challenging to navigate because low inventory, low volume markets. Volume is a key. I said this before. People don't realize this. The volumes of sales is as important as the prices. As long as there's volume, usually it sustains the market. The question becomes is with such a low volume of home sales, and that's where the final stat is.
Yes.
Because that's the most damning of all.
Yeah.
And we have, and that's the thing that has a little bit of a concern for me, but we'll get to that in a second. The inventory environment right now, and coinciding with very low there's been 2 consecutive months of pending home sales declines. I think this it ticked up this month about 1.1%.
Hmm.
See these blips, but the overall trend has been buyers have been shying away from the market, and people are starting to notice it. Some markets are getting hit harder than others. Where does that leave us? That's something that's going to the next 6, 8, 10 months. Obviously, we have to get past a very interesting time. I think how things end up may be consequential, or maybe not. But I think we have to see this pans out because it's a very interesting time to say the least. I can't tell you. It's an interesting time
Oh yeah.
to be in business. It's not. It's not a lot of things because people will use, and I've done this so many years that when we deal with homeowners and things like that, they use the exception as a rule, and they hear a rumor, or they someone so. In 2008, people got multiple offers. There's nobody. If the house was located in a good spot, I mean, obviously the internet didn't play as much of a role back then, but the houses did get multiple offers, even in the worst of markets. A matter of whether the house will sell. The question really becomes for the homeowner is will houses sell to where they want to accept an offer?
Mm.
And most people get this wrong. I think there's a decline. There may be a problem that has to be looked at if a house is selling. Some people will challenge this constantly. I just don't believe at this point people should be challenging. If you challenge the house isn't selling based on a few factors, you better identify those factors and cure it quickly because if there is any downturn, time is not on your side. And I'm not saying that I'm predicting that. I'm cautious about it. But anyway, let's get to the last and final piece of this crazy. Sorry, 603.
The fifth stat
This one.
and the biggest one is that home sales were at 3 million in 1980 and now they are at 4 million in 2024.
Uh-huh. That is so. To kind of put this in context, which is the most alarming stat and the biggest stat that would be confronting today.
Yes.
Um, we're basically almost, and we've made inroads to where house sales reached 1980 levels. Now, I want to make this clear. We had about 25 to 30% less of the population and probably a similar amount of inventory difference between now and then. To say that that's not significant is foolish. It's we are at a so we only had a million. So to kind of put it during 2020, 2021, and the interesting thing was more home sales taking place during the pandemic era, and the answer is no. People think they confuse that was the hottest part of the market. Actually, still 2006, 2005 were the hottest real estate markets ever, still in terms of volume. They still have it still eclipsed that. When you talk about the volumes now, like where people could afford things or will it work for them? My thing is this little volume, and even though we are seeing increase in inventory, and when we say 46% increase in inventory, it's important to know they were historically low to begin with, but we look for that jump up. It's quite a bit. So there's definitely not as many homes for sale in Florida as there was in 2006, even with the 46% increase. But volume of sales we're talking about now, that's a problem, okay? Or look at a problem moving forward. I don't know how much it could be a problem, but if any slump in home sales happen because of the lack of volume talking about here, like I said, and to highlight this whole entire thing, these numbers, we haven't seen home sales data this low like since the 80s, 1980s. So we're talking about 30 years ago. Yes, but the contrast between the two is that we have considerably more housing and considerably more people. So people aren't, so that's a kind of a wild swing. I don't know where that takes us as far in terms of like the health of the market moving forward. I do, and that's not here to cause any panic whatsoever. You should have an idea of where you want, but it has to be something that you have to have your finger on the pulse of, because with the inventory, low volume market that we have, price prices could swing quite dramatically, and we've seen at any other juncture in the past, and that's really the thing to note about this entire segment, which is the kind of wow numbers. This is the most unusual time in real estate history, and yeah, like it's unusual time, and people are experiencing different in different places rather quickly, and to stay on top of that, I think that obviously tuning into next week's live videos regarding the stats, right?
Yes.
Next week we'll be doing the stat videos for both New Jersey, which is going to be interesting to see. I like to see how those numbers pan out.
Yeah.
You can capture that. We do that once a month, twice a month. Once for Monmouth Ocean and the other for Staten Island. And we'll, incorporate other things, other data points that also come in as well. So we'd like to make a complete picture of the overall health.
Yes.
Obviously, we have someone not watching, but anyway, I got it. But it is 6 o'clock on Friday, and it is what we're going to call the end of the segment. And like I said, soon to next week's segment where we're going to go and touch on the home sales data for New Jersey and New York.
Yes, so tune in.
All right. So everybody have a great night. Happy Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week.
Yes. Bye, guys.